Welcome to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I'm your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. On our pages, we have the most cost-effective job posting board, listing hundreds of open student services positions and a wide range of webinars. I would like to thank our sponsor, Alcohol 101 Plus, a cost-free digital alcohol education program developed by responsibility.org. Designed to be used by colleges and universities, the course includes interactive and quick-paced programming covering core alcohol education topics. To learn more about Alcohol 101 Plus, visit alcohol101.plus. On today's episode, I am very pleased to have Dr. Jason Laker, a full professor in the Department of Counselor Education at San Jose State University. He previously served as Associate Vice Principal and Dean of Student Affairs at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Canada, and was the Dean of Campus Life at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. Welcome to the program, Jason.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity.
So, Jason, what is your one thing?
The one thing is, if you don't do this now, you'll never do it. That phrase came to me 30 years ago. I was finishing college at Central Michigan University. As you well know, you don't major in student affairs. People major in whatever. I was studying broadcasting and got really involved. That's sort of the typical backstory. I was an RA, peer health educator, student government. I even ran for city council in that town. I was involved and very much on a climbing type path. And so once I decided to go into student affairs, as many do in their undergrads, next thing I wanted to do was have a strategy to just really move along and advance. And that was my general way of thinking. But in any event, I did my job search. There was no internet back then. I had to mail things. I had to go to Kinko's and make photocopies. It seems like so long ago and far away. And I happened to get an offer to be a residence hall director at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. So that's in the southwest corner of the state in the mountains. And I had never been west of the Mississippi. I just mailed applications out and did a phone interview. So I'll never forget, it was very visual, receiving the call of offering the job. And they asked me, it was a Friday, they asked me to wait till Monday to tell them, because I guess they get a lot of no's. People haven't heard of the place or was far away or whatever. And I must say, I was a little bit wigged out. Like I said, I've never been out that way. I'm from Detroit. It was more city type. And I felt kind of nervous, thinking about that. And then it just hit me. If you don't do this now, you'll never do it. And the truth is, I'm not the type to go buy a Harley and head west. That's just not my style. But having a little crappy apartment and a little meal plan and $1,000 a month, that's less risky, but still scary to go so far away into a place I didn't know. But I did it. And it was rewarded. First of all, a completely new experience, a different part of the country, different group of colleagues in the professional groups. I met my wife there. It's going to be 30 years next year. So we had our first kid there. So all these things came from deciding, there's a saying, courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. And that's really how it felt for me. I realize in retrospect, it's not the biggest risk it would seem, but at that time, it certainly felt that way. And because of that, it's like, that's your professional socialization. That's your first job, And so the habits we start, it reminds me like those faculty say, when I get tenure, then I'm going to tell, no, you won't. Because you're being socialized for 6 or 7 years to behave a certain way. And if you comport yourself accordingly, you will continue to behave. And people who know me wouldn't describe me as someone who behaves. But anyway, so that became a longstanding habit and practice for me. And over this will be my 30th year in higher ed. And I look back, I worked in Canada. That was another one. What do you mean? Apply for a job in Canada, got the job, and I went. And or before that at a Catholic university, and I'm a Jewish guy from Detroit, and I'm working with monks now in Minnesota. So, but you know what? Each of these have made for adventures. Also, fairly recently, just in the last, say, 6 years or so, had the opportunity to go to Pakistan with a State Department grant. To be perfectly frank, as an American and a Jew, I was nervous to do that because of stereotypes. Let's be frank. So I went and met the most incredible people, and I'm still engaged with them. In fact, I'm speaking at a conference virtually, but still. So anyway, my one thing, if you don't do this now, you'll never do it. And that, I guess, in translation to listeners is trust that voice. We're not here to be small, and we're not here to be boring. And there's a lot of conventional wisdom, so to speak, and expectations of us and stereotypical pathways. More generally, I've had a really storied and interesting life and career because of following that practice of trying things. If you don't do this now, you'll never do it. And eventually that just becomes your norm.
There are 2 points to that. One, like you said, it gives you that opportunity to expand your professional horizons. It's very easy to say, like you, okay, I'm a Detroit big city person. That's what I know. That's what I'm going to stay. And that's fine for a lot of people, but it might not expand those viewpoints within the profession. And number 2, by taking chances, you grow as an individual. And I think what you said, perfect example. You grew as an individual going to the West, the Midwest, a small school, and you can use those experiences to further your career.
Yes, it is all too easy to stick with a habit. So to your point, if someone stays relatively close to where they grew up, that's fine. That's not really, because it's not really the point of what I'm saying, right? It's know why you're doing it. If you're doing it, be intentional. And so you choose to, remain there. Or in my case, I choose to go, pursue those unknowns, having some faith that even if there'll be costs and scary things or upsets or whatever, and there certainly have been, but the rewards, and sometimes the rewards pretty immediate, the particular job or the salary's good or meet great people. And sometimes it kind of creeps up on you later in the form of things like wisdom and discernment, or meeting people you didn't know were the right ones you needed to meet at the time. And then you later come to learn that. So there's just so many treasures to be had by being intentional of going away from the comfort. And when you hear that voice in you, like you've done the evaluation, the technicals were there. I had a job, there was a salary, was it really that big of a risk? But at the point, and then that's the point, there's a lot of anxiety in people generally, and certainly in our field, is that sometimes you have to be afraid and do it anyway.
One of my personal mantras, and I've told people this for ages, if you have the time, the finances, but even if the finances are a little shaky, if you have the opportunity, do it, because you might never have that opportunity again. And then you'll just be thinking back about the what ifs.
And I have to also thank you. You've been, we've known each other. We don't know each other well, but we go back a long time, many years. And I think you've been a great MC to the field, in what you've created. And it's always something I've appreciated and admired. And like having to do with taking chances, it's not something I would have wanted to do, but I'm so glad that you did it. And I've certainly benefited from your work. So thank you as well.
Well, thank you, Jason. I want to thank you for sharing that one thing. Like I said, that is one of my personal goals. And I hope for my staff and colleagues over the many years that I've been in the field, I've been able to impart that on them to really do what you're saying, because I just think it is so important to be able to take some risks and do what you can do at the moment. You've been listening to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I want to thank today's guest, Dr. Jason Laker, a full professor in the Department of Counselor Education at San Jose State University. My name is Stuart Brown, and I am the developer of StudentAffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. I hope you will join us again next time for another episode of the Student Affairs One Thing.